So this graph you've seen sort of with, this is Deutsche Bank's graph, and you've got all the different types of technologies and how their costs are coming down, and you sort of see their oversupply prediction over this period of time, and then consistent undersupply. I think for the U.S. this number this crossover point will shift to the left. So, and the reason for that is just because we have places that have a lot of sun and high electricity prices, namely California, as well as increasingly Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, whose rates are skyrocketing upwards. So you'll see that crossover point in the U.S. occur far faster. But I really want to caution you on demand in the U.S. is that the U.S. is really viewing themselves as a market of last resort. And until the marketplace views it as a market of last resort, it's not something that we're going to see triple-digit growth rates in until module manufacturers believe that they have to cut prices sufficiently to make that market go. So as you guys know, module prices are determined by supply and demand. The data is extraordinarily poor. I mean, all the presentations you've heard today are leading people to believe in this room that there's going to be incredible amounts of oversupply next year. Nobody in the conference is saying that. And every single person is talking to me about how they're sold out in Italy. And I mean, Italy must be a 4 gigawatt market next year with how much stuff people have put into there. The Czech Republic has like 500 megawatts of contracts. Everybody's gotten their 20 megawatt contract in there. So either we're going to bankrupt the country, or that's probably not true. So I don't, unfortunately, with the data being so poor, it's a very difficult thing to sort of avoid chaos, right? I mean, chaos comes from a difference in expectations on both sides. And so until there's a meeting of the minds between the supply side and the demand side, there's going to be this struggle that is persistent. And it's difficult for downstream players like us and others. It's a lot of money to go out and develop projects that literally just sit on your balance sheet because you don't have modules at a certain price to be able to build them. So that's money tied up, and we can only do so much. So demand creation takes time. DG is faster, but it still takes 4 to 8 months to create a significant DG portfolio from a standing stop. So if someone were to call you tomorrow and say, I've got modules at $250 a watt US, can you take them? It's highly unlikely that people have 100 megawatts or something like that just sitting around to projects that are ready to do construction in a week or two. It does take time to get all the paperwork in place. And central station plans have taken up to 2 years from signing to construction. So the demand creation does take a little time. And prices can collapse. And so what you're finding in the demand side is that there will continue to be a struggle on both sides from the U.S. I mean, there's a lot of people in the U.S. that remember 2003 and remember how cheap panels were. And so it's going to be a little bit of a tug of war in the U.S. market next year. This is our project cycle. I just wanted you guys to sort of understand how demand is created. So you sort of, you have a sales pipeline, which could take 6 months. Let's see what the next one is. Yeah. These are DG. You do a margin analysis. If the margins work out, you do all the land title, host credit, interconnection, rebate application work. If that works out, then you go and actually sign the purchase agreement, et cetera. And if that works out, you rerun the margin analysis. You actually secure bank commitments, et cetera. And then you construct the projects, right? So it's questionable how much of this part of our work we really want to do without any guidance as to when module prices are going to fall sufficiently for the U.S. market to actually go crazy in places like California. And for the projects we're doing for utilities, it's the same thing. We basically, it's much longer cycles. So we're looking for open fields and brown fields. We're doing margin analysis. We're doing all these things, all of those things, and then it can take up to 2 years depending on how big some of these projects are to build them. And then this graph, I don't know if you guys have seen it before, but it's something that's that everyone's talking about on the demand side, right? Is that where are we going to get cost reductions from, right? There's cell efficiency improvements, manufacturing capacity factors. Most people are at 60% today. Scale factors, silicon cost reductions, balance of system reliability, installation efficiency and speed, right? So there's a way to get to 11 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour. Which I think many folks have publicly stated is their goal for 2012. But the process of creating demand is something that does take time. And until, I, for one, don't have any contracts signed to be able to hit this goal yet, right? So there's a tug of war. This is just, a better way of presenting what I did last year around, solar today, we can get systems installed for $4,000 a kW. And then you've got small amounts of T&D improvements and small amounts of O&M. So even on a capital cost basis, it can be cheaper than nuclear and new coal. And this still excludes fuel costs, risks, environmental costs with fuel mining, et cetera. So solar is becoming more and more compelling in the US. I wouldn't expect hundreds of megawatts to go in because of that next year. But over time, I think the trends are good. I mean, I do think the US market will be the market that actually transforms the meaning of grid parity. It's just not something I think it'll happen next year. And then you guys have seen this probably from me before, the utility incentive versus customer incentive graphs. Feed-in tariffs are unquestionably a better policy to grow markets really fast, but they're costing between 2 and 3 times more per megawatt than the policies in the US. And you're seeing that with Spain, as well as other markets like Greece, I think, has recently announced they're going to actively manage that market in terms of the number of megawatts. So I think the customer incentive approach, which is what normally happens in the US, is an extraordinarily difficult approach to put in place. It requires renewable energy credits, bilateral negotiations, a lot of painstaking education. But I think this is the way the US believes we can get to grid parity and transition there faster. So I think there's a lot of wonderful things happening in the US. We recently had Ohio, Maryland, Delaware. Florida just passed some favorable legislation, which isn't yet a market, but getting there. New Mexico and Arizona passed their programs now. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in the US, but we're counting these things in 100 megawatts of growth, maybe a little bit less. We're not talking hundreds of megawatts of growth next year. So this is, this is the case that we're making today. South Carolina wants to raise rates 37% for this nuclear power plant. A solar grid would only be a 2% rate increase or a 7% rate increase to actually meet 100% of the megawatt hours, including storage. The Indiana coal plant, 18% rate increase they're doing now for this. Sorry, this should be a coal plant. The solar grid would be like 3% rate increase with a 14% rate increase to meet 100% of the megawatt hours. And even the new transmission line from West Virginia to Maryland is coming in so expensive that a solar grid would be cheaper. So it's a big fight. Utilities are going to continue to do solar, and SunEdison is participating in a lot of those projects. But consumers don't really benefit from central station solar, and consumers are the ones that are really fighting now for more renewable energy, more DG, other things. So that's my presentation. Thanks.